Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tooele Happy Hour podcast. Today, our guest, Joel Briscoe from Utah House District 24, has a special announcement to tell us about some legislation that he's working on. Now, Jared's not here today. Today we have a guest host. Whit, you might have been on the show once or twice before, right?
It's been 2 or 3 times. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So
it's always good to be here.
And he just told me something special today, too. Whit, tell the audience what you've been up to on your project.
Well, one of my many projects is called Tooele Valley Patriot Camp. Patriot Camp is a American history / American civics camp. It's for elementary age kids to come and learn about American history. It's also for teenagers too, who might not be as excited about having some of the crafts or playing some of the games as the younger kids, but they can still come to camp, and they're camp counselors. They come at a discounted rate. This is the way American history should be taught in a fun and exciting atmosphere. What we do is I bring in actors from all around the state of Utah, mostly along the Wasatch Front. They come dressed in period clothing as these historical figures, such as founding fathers or other important people in history, founders of Jamestown, or maybe they came across on the Mayflower and have a story to tell these kids, and the kids love it.
That does sound pretty wild.
Yeah, they actually get to meet these people and hear their stories from their their experience right there in front of them. And then we usually have a Q&A session too. Most of the actors are good along those lines, and they give the kids an opportunity to interact. And that's just the beginning of it. It's really neat. It's really fun for the kids.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. We'll probably be down there. We'll try to do some interviews or a little bit of podcasting while we're there, and check it out. So,
yeah, we actually had to increase our camp enrollment this year because it's just so widely popular. We opened enrollment about 3 weeks ago, and we only have about 20 spots left of 150. So, yeah, if there's anybody out there listening, we have 20 spots left.
Get it while it's good.
Yeah.
All right. So today's episode, I want to set the mood here for a moment. I want you to imagine that your child is out at a party, and that party has alcohol involved, maybe even cigarettes, alcohol and cigarettes, let's say. And the kids are experiencing a bit of a drought at the party, and they decide, I need to go replenish that alcohol. We're going to go get in the truck, turn those keys, and drive down the highway to the store to buy more beer. Now, that's a nightmare scenario that I think every parent would dread. I would never want my kids, if I had kids, to drive drunk to go get more beer, or even the neighbors, or anyone for that matter. And let's say that they wipe out a family of 4 or hurt themselves. For what? Because they were going to go get their beer. And if you think that sounds like an outrageous scenario, I can guarantee you it's not. I've experienced it myself firsthand many times. And it crushes your soul to think that these are things that are so easily preventable. So I reached out to Joel, and I asked him, hey, is there anything we can do to help maybe mitigate this just a little bit? And he had a great idea. Joel, will you tell our audience about what you're working on right now and how it can impact them here in Utah?
David, happy to do that. The concept is really quite simple. Today, you can use your phone, your laptop, your computer. You can dial into a local grocery store and order food. You can pick it up, you can have it delivered. My legislation will allow people to use their phone or their computer, order beer online, and have that beer delivered to their home. It's that's really it. Um, why don't we allow people to use the means of the state's programs for vetting and making sure people are over 21, make it safe, and not have to have anyone in a car going anywhere from any party because they forgot to order too much beer, enough beer to have to pick the person in the party who's least drunk or has drunk the least to go get them a few more. That's it in a nutshell.
Now, there was previous legislation like this that was put out. I believe it was HB 100, correct, Whit?
Right.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
This last legislative session. Yep.
Yep.
Is this the same thing in a template, or is this going to be different?
You know, you're always willing to make changes in order to get more votes. I remember former Speaker Becky Lockhart said there's three numbers that matter: 38, 15, and 1. You got to get 38 votes to get it out of the House of Representatives and 15 votes in the Senate, and the governor has to sign it. We might there might be a few modifications in HB 100. I don't think there'll be major modifications. The state provides training. The only people who could deliver the beer would be off-premise resellers, Smiths, Dan's, Harmon's, people who are currently selling beer, Reams, current off-premise beer retailers, they would be allowed to deliver beer. The people who deliver have to be over 21. The people who receive have to be 21. Their ID has to match. It's a little bit like going to a bar, except it's your home or your address. And the credit card is run when the person shows up with the alcohol and a transaction is made.
Excellent. That sounds realistic. It sounds practical. Where are the hangups? It doesn't seem like this should be anything more complicated than even the flag legislation that we just had.
I'll guarantee you one thing: my legislation won't, cost $500,000 like the flag bill. I saw that on the news this week. I'm going to tell you a story. Around the corner from me lives a guy named David Jones. He used to represent my area of Salt Lake in the legislature. He was there 25 years ago. He ran legislation. Before he ran his legislation, if you went to a liquor store to buy alcohol, a state liquor store, which is the only kind we have in Utah for other than beer, you had to pay in cash. Mm-hmm. And here's the story he told in the legislature. Utah was trying to recruit a business. We're like every other state. We're in competition for business. Right now, we're doing really well. They convinced this company to hold their corporate retreat at Snowbird. It's a beautiful part of the state. It showcases the beauty of the mountains. It's Friday or Saturday night. They've had a great day. Someone says, "Hey, there's a liquor store down at the bottom of the valley, down at the bottom of the canyon. Take some orders. Let's go down and get," I don't know what they were purchasing, wine or something else. He drives to the bottom of the canyon at night. It's kind of a windy, turny road. He makes the order and they say, "Okay, cash only." He said, "No, wait a minute. In Utah, you have to use cash in the state liquor store?" And they go, "Well, yeah, that's the law here, sir." So he has to drive back up the canyon, not in quite as good a mood as he was driving down, and say, "Okay, in this state, it's got to be cash." And they went, "You're kidding me." So he collects the cash, goes down, completes the sale, drives back up. And Representative Jones said, "So what message is he taking back to whatever state he's from about wanting to move to Utah? Can we change the law so people can purchase at the state liquor store with credit?" And the legislature did that. There are people in Utah who want to make it difficult for people to procure alcohol. And it's not easy to pass legislation. I would argue that all my legislation is doing is changing the location. That ordering online and having it delivered to you has the same safety standards and the same procedures as walking in to Smith's or Dan's or Harmon's and purchasing beer at self-serve or through the line. Got to show ID. ID's got to match. Got to be over 21.
That makes sense. And well, do we have an estimate on maybe what the impact would be for drunk driving if this bill was passed? Has there been a study done or any I don't know, even just any wild wags of creative number crunching?
I I did reach out to a national institute who sent me some data. During coronavirus, there were some more states that loosened restrictions on purchases. Some states allowing online sales, like I'm proposing. Some of those states rolled them back, said, okay, well, we helped you out during the coronavirus, but we're done. So you don't get to do that anymore. I think that's short-sighted. I think that's anti-business. I think that's anti-safe. The study I looked at, they don't have as much data on those states because I think there were less than 25, as they do for 50 states that sell alcohol. Even though there's some dry counties as a result of prohibition in some states, every state has numerous locations that do sell. And I don't think there was a significant difference. I mean, if you're going to go to a store and purchase, you've got a distance. You're not supposed to drink with open containers. You got to drive home. This is not driving to the store and not driving home. This is someone from the store drives to your place and says, "Here's your beer," and you say, "Thank you." Party on. So I don't have the one study I looked at didn't show a significant difference.
Okay. Well, even if there isn't a significant difference, I don't know. I would suppose there's a definite convenience to the fact. And I can understand where people are resistant to the idea. There's an age limit of 21 to purchase alcohol, and this state is really serious about that. And where do you?
And I would never propose anything that I thought was going to easily put liquor in the hands of underage kids. I taught high school for over 20 years. I love the experience. I love being around young adults. Some of them are incredibly mature. Some of them act like they're 16. Mm-hmm. And they don't always make the greatest decisions. And when people talk to me about them not making great decisions, I will always defend those kids because I'm around people my age who don't always make the greatest decisions, But there's a reason why we have a 21 age limit, and I support that. And there's nothing in this legislation there's nothing to prevent someone from walking into 7-Eleven, buying a six-pack, driving home and handing it to a underage brother or sister, friend.
It doesn't.
There's nothing today that prevents that from happening. It's illegal. We don't want it to. We don't want that to happen. The way the bill's written is that the person who the store gets an order, they run the card, but they don't process it until they get to the place. They get to the location. They ask to see ID, and then it's like trying to get into an establishment in Utah that serves. Your name, the address is different. It's got to match. Explain to me why the address doesn't match. All the checks that we have now for making sure we serve liquor to the people who are of age are going to exist for delivery.
So changing the accessibility of being able to receive liquor, or in this case, beer, it does change the dynamic, though. When we make things easier for people, it also makes it more accessible. And for an individual to sit in the comfort of their home and not worry or fear the consequences of their alcohol limit, there's a concern. There's a big concern that people won't regulate their intake as much as they would if they were going out. Another thing is that I believe that it would increase the accessibility for minors as well. We could put as many restrictions in place as possible. Heck, we can go back to prohibition, and people will still find a way to get their liquor. And it's eventually we repealed that amendment that made liquor illegal. And so, while I understand the accessibility issue on the other end, I don't believe that the solution to the problem is to make it easier for anyone to receive their liquor. It just opens up a whole new window of possibility for the intent of possibly, probably, potentially reducing drunk driving. I don't think it's the right solution.
But why would you care about what people do in their own home with their health? I mean, we let them line up at McDonald's, for crying out loud. I think if we did anything, we should make that clown illegal, because that guy kills more people than, well, probably more people than the COVID jab or something.
Well, it's true. Well, anything that anybody does in their own home, right? It should be their own business. It really should be. But we're not talking about just that individual. We're talking about others that could be impacted by this too. So while it could potentially take drivers off of the road who are impaired, think of others who might be in that home who are suffering the consequences of higher intakes of alcohol. There is no victimless crime when it comes to these any type of substance, whether it's legal or illegal. If it impairs you in any way, it's not a victimless crime, and so we have to think of those.
That's such a tightrope to walk, though. I mean, then you're saying you want to help people by restricting them, and I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if maybe when you tell people not to do something, that it makes them want to do it more.
Of course.
I look at European children versus American children. And when you're over in Europe, they'll drink wine, they drink beer, they're completely rational about it. Then you come back here and you see the kids in the college dorms and they're going crazy drinking beer and doing weird enema things with it and dying because of their craziness. And they're only doing that because we're telling them not to do it. I even think the same thing about pot. I see all these kids like smoking pot and taking pictures of them smoking bongs and weird devices like that. And I think, had we had made that just their choice and accessible to them as they see fit, would they have decided to go that direction in life? Would they have really embraced it that intensely?
Well, it's true. That is very true for certain personalities. For those that are intent on choosing their own path, and there are different types of freedom. There are different types of liberties, and the liberties that I think of when I think of the ones that are enshrined in our Constitution, the liberties that should be protected, are the ones that come with a certain amount of responsibility with them too. Not just the freedom to do whatever you want, not just the freedom to be able to harm or potentially cause harm to anybody because you get to do whatever you want. No, in a civilized society, we do have certain restrictions that govern our actions. So I think that all of us would agree that any infliction of bodily harm on you, or if you were to try to inflict bodily harm on me, that would be completely unacceptable. So we codify that. We put restrictions. I think everyone here would agree that we shouldn't have to codify that we should just allow that to happen. But there are those with low impulse control. There are those that are going to inflict physical harm anyway, and we need to have the consequences. Those that those personalities that only listen to force, those who only listen to compulsion, those who only operate on fear, do need to have those restrictions. And so we codify it. We have some way of putting our thoughts and our words and our, I would even say morality, because that is a moral decision on whether or not you can inflict bodily harm on me or if I can inflict bodily harm on you. To us, it comes naturally, I hope. But just that little bit of fear keeps other people in line. And then the fear of consequence keeps other people in line. And even at that point, there are some that don't even care about that, and they're still willing to do it.
Well, I would argue also that the fear of consequence creates the inability to react naturally. For example, where I'm from New York. So if someone breaks into your house while you're in New York and you defend your castle, you will end up going to jail. So, you know,
and that's a shame.
And I see a lot of that in both, you know, red and blue states. Both have their give and take in different areas. But
that's why I don't believe in libertarianism. Libertarianism is basically a free-for-all. It's very close to anarchy. Let everybody do what they're going to do, and the strong will prevail. I mean, that's Darwinism right there.
But wouldn't libertarians also argue that people are to be trusted to a certain degree and also to suffer from the impact of their actions?
Right, and I agree with that philosophy. I believe in trusting people until they give me a reason to not trust them. And even then, I still give a second or third chance, and even more, depending on the infraction. If somebody's going to come after me and attack me physically or in grievous manners, there's no way. I want the law.
So can I give you a couple of other perspectives? My oldest daughter spent her school year in Germany, and she wanted to learn German because my wife's parents were small children when they emigrated from Germany in the 1920s. And she wanted to learn German, and she lived with a German family and went to school with the German kids, went to the gymnasium. And she told that we called her almost every Saturday night, spent a half an hour or so on the phone. And she told us that they love to make fun of American GMOs. They called them Frankenfoods. How come you guys are willing to modify your food? But when they had a break between classes or at lunch, a third of the kids would go out and smoke. Cigarettes were easy to obtain. I remember as a boy growing up in Bountiful, Utah, you beg your parents for a quarter or dimes and nickels, and you could put them into a machine. It was a little bit like a slot machine, pull a handle, and you could get your candy bar. That's how they sold cigarettes, she said, in Germany, outside of Berlin. We would find that ludicrous and crazy, that you would give kids that easy access to tobacco products. There's also a survey done, an anonymous survey of a large number of Utah students. And I went through it a few years ago when we were discussing medical cannabis, medical marijuana. And they asked students, people were going, well, we're going to turn all our kids into potheads. And they asked students questions like, in the last 30 days, that's usually their standard. If you've taken a drink and you smoked a cigarette, if you smoke marijuana, they ask them really interesting questions like, have you ever carried a weapon, a gun, and have you ever seen one in school? But on the issue of smoking marijuana or drinking, they also ask them a series of questions about what messages their parents have been giving them. What messages are your parents giving you about smoking, about drinking, about drugs, about marijuana? And if parents have consistently said, that's not something we do, or that's not something we do at your age, and if the parents have been consistent with what they've said, the number of students who report that they've used in the last 30 days is like 1%, 2%. 99% of the kids hear the messages that their parents are preaching if the parents are consistent with the message they're preaching.
Yeah, and sadly, there are too many parents that don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have that negative a view of Utah parents.
I try to go by the 80-20 rule, and at least that's the way I seem to observe it. There's like 80% good in the world, and then there's a 20% negative, and usually those 20% negative ruin it for the 80% good. And just like when I was going through the military, you got one guy that messes up, we all drop for push-ups. And I really don't want the civilian population to have to endure that in terms of their rulers ruling over them. I think I want a civilian population where if the individual does mess up in life, he pays those consequences properly. But I don't want other people to have to suffer for an individual's mistakes.
Right. And so just to bring it back into perspective, we're not talking about prohibition. We're talking about greater accessibility to it. And so providing greater accessibility to a substance that's already restricted to certain ages, that's already restricted to certain areas to where it can be sold in the state of Utah, to where we have all of these restrictions, and then making it more accessible is making it easier, or would make it easier, to where those restrictions can be flouted, even with the precautions that are in this bill. So one of the precautions is that the individual will be trained. Another is that that would be delivering the liquor, or the beer in this case, the alcohol. The individual would be taught in that training how to check an ID. Another big cross-check on this is that it requires that any beer delivery would be recorded as well. And that's a good thing. And it also causes me to wonder, why would we need to require that if there was no possibility of it being abused?
Well, when I was a high school teacher, I had a student whose father was either in law enforcement or he was working for the county attorney. And the student told me he made a little bit of extra money once or twice a month, that they would send him to retail establishments and he would try and buy cigarettes. Maybe he was also trying to buy liquor. Underage, he was 16, I think. And so you test the system. And that system is tested. I mean, I have a friend who owns a couple of bars in Salt Lake City. And she told me if you're a restaurant and you lose your liquor license, you might be able to make it. If you're a bar and you use your liquor license, you're out of business. I mean, no one's going to come in for nachos. Sorry, they're there to drink. And she told me they get IDs, and the address is different than this. And I want to use my words carefully here. I don't want to say anything that is outrageous. They're very careful who they let into their bar. They let if they have questions, there's a machine, they put it in and they report. They report to DABS. And the state goes, look, here's a person who tried to get in and we have some questions. We didn't let him in and we think you should check this ID. They don't want to lose that license. And on this system, if this were ever put into place, there will be checks. And the penalty in the legislation is you screw up and are lax, you're going to lose a license. Those things are valuable. They're an economic good. People fight to get them because they make money off them. And they want to treat the law carefully. I'm also going to push back a little bit on your suggestion that allowing to have beer delivered to a person's home makes it more available to people.
More convenient.
I don't see how minors have any more access to beer being delivered to a home than someone driving to a place and purchasing it and bringing home. For me, the key is what's the culture in that home, the people who are in charge of that house. They obey the rules, and they tell their kids, you're under 21, you don't get a drink. I'm gonna also throw in something new here. When I got an email from a constituent who's 80 years old and said, Representative, thank you. I love getting online and ordering my food, getting my bread and milk and my food and having it delivered to my doorstep. But I have to ask a neighbor to get my beer. And I'm tired of asking my neighbor to get my beer. I'm 80. I don't move real well. It's heavy to pick up and load. I'm having my groceries delivered because it's hard for me. So thank you for making it easier for me, 80 years old, to have my beer delivered to my house.
So I'm going to change the argument just a little bit. Alcohol has its great number of negative impacts on the human body. I personally do not drink alcohol. And that's not because of a religious belief. Anybody that knows Whit Cook knows that I do things according to my own conscience, and not necessarily because I'm told to do it. Secondly, a second reason is I've seen many of individuals destroy their lives due to substance abuse. One of those substances being alcohol. And so when I talk about those who that there are those that suffer the consequences of those people having their freedom to choose, I speak from experience. So giving people the freedom or not restricting their ability to have any level of debauchery or any level of ability to destroy their own body, I get it. That's a certain type of freedom that people like to have. What I was talking about earlier is that there's a difference in liberty. The liberty that I believe in is the liberty that comes with responsibility, and those that liberty that leads to a constructive and civilized society and civilized world. I understand that people may have issues that they want to drink away, and so they self-medicate. I am a veteran. I can honestly say that I've been very tempted to self-medicate at times in my life, suffering from PTSD and other things that I won't go into. But I feel for my brothers and sisters in arms that feel like they need to resort to substances in order to just cope with some of the things that they've experienced. Knowing where that leads, though, in the destruction of the body, I just can't see allowing accessibility to find those substances to make it even easier for them to obtain it. I can't see. It's not restricted now, but why make it easier for them to obtain it?
Well, I don't accept, with all due respect, and I want to pause here and thank you for your service. My father, I was born on an Air Force base. My father got through college in the 1950s through Air Force ROTC, and he owed his government some time. It was immediately after the Korean War, and I was born at Malmstrom Air Force Base just outside Great Falls. And my father's military service to his country is a matter of great pride to me. And if I know anyone's a vet, I will thank them. And so, Whit, I thank you for your service.
Thank you.
During Prohibition, Warren Harding had alcohol in the upstairs in the second floor of the White House. And when he trusted his friends, he served it to them. When we had a chance, the leaders of the LDS Church asked voters in Utah to keep Prohibition on the ballot. And in 1932, voters in Utah threw it out. And I think the message, the public, it was a great idea to say the textbooks, U.S. history textbooks I used with my students showed some of the arguments of the prohibitionists. And the women who were fighting against people consuming alcohol had a great impact in a series of 2 or 3 decades in reducing the amount of alcohol consumed. You couldn't do it, well, you couldn't legally do it today, but in the 30s and 40s, and we're only talking men voting, it was like they set up shop in the town square, and you went to the party you wanted and you got their ballot and you went and dropped it into the box, and some of them plied them with liquor, and the smart one said, you go vote, come back and you'll get your alcohol. It didn't work. Prohibition did not work. And I think that what the public said was, look, let's put appropriate restrictions on it, age, et cetera, and let's trust people. We'll put in Utah, if you, as in, I think in almost any state, if you self-medicate, and I see self-medication as a disease, There's something going on in your life you're not dealing with successfully. Other people self-medicate with food. So I know people who self-medicate, who've gotten it. No one wakes up in the morning and goes, I want to be addicted. I think I want to live the rest of my life an addict. I want to get addicted to a substance that's going to make me forget my troubles, but could lead to my death and will make me impossible to keep a good job, destroy my relationships with my family and my faith. No one does that. No one says, I'm going to do that. You got to be in a lot of pain to self-medicate to that degree. But I think as a society, we're going, look, do it. My friends who drink, I don't drink. I'm LDS. I'm not a drinker. My friends who drink are responsible. Now, they're not 17. They're not 18. They're older. They drink at meals. I had a friend who went on a camp when I was in college at the U. He stopped drinking for a while because he went on a fishing trip, and his friends started telling stories about what he did when he got drunk, and he couldn't remember them. And he thought, oh, I think I went over the top. I think I won't do that anymore. I haven't seen him a number of years. I don't know that many people who drink like that, and that was when he was in his 20s. So yeah. It's 21 and over.
So
we're all, I think everyone on this call, the three of us agree that we don't want liquor in the hands of people who shouldn't have it. And under 21 shouldn't have liquor. There's ways they can get it today. We abhor people who easily procure it and give it to people they know shouldn't have it. And when you're over 21, you're on your own. When my daughter was in Germany, there was a young man who was 18 who shot up a school and killed some people. He was angry because the only way you get into college is to pass a test at the end of your senior year, and they wouldn't let him take the test. So he went back and completed another full year. When you're 18, you're legal in Germany. You can't drive a car until you're 18. You can't purchase a weapon until you're 18. You can't drink until you're 18. You hit 18, bam, guns, alcohol, cars. You're 18, you're of age, do it. In the United States, it varies. 21 for this, 18 for that, maybe 19 for this. Maybe you can work in this kind of establishment at 16. I mean, I'm defending the U.S. system.
Yeah.
I've lived in it. There's things I would do differently. I'm not saying we should do it Germany's way necessarily.
Right. And considering that
I like living in the U.S., as convoluted as it can be. I like the fact that the state has some power and the feds have some power. Cities and counties have some power. I like distributing power around. Makes things more complicated and sometimes more difficult, but it gets more people involved and allows more people to help make decisions. On this issue, the federal government has said states will not get transportation money if you let anyone under 18 drink. In the 1980s, there were, I think, Georgia, and there were 3 or 4 other states allowed people under 21 to drink. They sued, or someone sued, and the court said, you know what? Congress has the authority because it's interstate traffic. If you let anyone under the age of 21 drink, they can restrict the amount of funds you get from the federal highways, for federal highways. Now everyone in the United States is under 21. The state of Utah can determine all kinds of other issues to do with that.
Yeah, the 10th Amendment is great.
I think this is a small change that I'm proposing that we make in Utah. It still preserves 21, still has effects. If people abuse it, it's because they don't have, I don't know. The people who abuse it will be the people who abuse 21 and under now.
Right. And that was the point that I was just going to make, is that we're not clearing up that issue. This bill, at least in its current iteration, does not address that concern. The only concern that I can think of that the bill addresses is drunk driving, and at the expense of making it more accessible for people. I don't think it's the right solution. So in order to get people to stop drinking and then driving afterward, is to make it more accessible to them, or would it be to spend money more in education, educating people of the effects of alcohol? Trying to help individuals with more AA programs to help them with their addiction, instead of giving. I mean, this is what San Francisco does. Hey, everybody's going to, it's the same argument. Everybody's going to use crack cocaine anyway. So let's just provide them with the needles so that they can do it. It's just, or the crack pipes.
I'm going to beg to differ. I don't think this is not passing out alcohol. I understand that argument. It's been made in Utah before, and it was having safe injection zones, and it's been quashed. It didn't even get a hearing. People aren't willing to talk about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
that's what we're doing here, though, because we're giving them their home as their safe drinking space.
People are allowed over 21
are allowed.
People over 21 are allowed to drink alcohol in their homes.
Right. Wait, you got to understand though, the rest of the world is so much more relaxed about this subject than Utah is. In fact, I feel very uncomfortable in Utah drinking. I'm
okay with that. If we need to set the example, then so be it.
It's not an example though. Utah.
I think it is.
Utah is being a nanny state is what it is.
I don't think it's being a nanny state because we restrict alcohol to 21 years old.
Wait, how old were you when you went into service?
Hold on.
How old were you with?
So we have this, we have that ability. So we're not changing the age limit.
No, we're not.
What we're doing
but how old
with this bill, what this bill would do is make it more accessible. So, and the representative here agrees that, and he made the point that this will not affect that whatsoever. What this will do is just make it more accessible. We will now deliver you this impairing substance to your front door.
Right.
And you know what?
We can also conscript your children into the military. We can do all sorts of horrible things in the Republic. But there is a patriotic flame inside of me that screams, we have to have the freedoms to destroy or improve our own lives.
People have the freedom
in our own
to go pick up their own liquor right now.
Unless you're 80 years old, and you can't pick it up.
I'm going to be a really big jerk right now. And I'm going to say, you know what, at the expense of those who are in the younger generations, I'm sorry, Grandpa, you're going to have to find somebody to go pick it up for you. And you're going to have to keep it that way. We don't want to improve accessibility so that you can continue to destroy your life or your relationships or your liver, which is your freedom to do. I'm sorry, we're not going to deliver it to your front door just so that you can do that at the detriment.
If I'm listening to you carefully, what your argument is that anyone who drinks is destroying their liver. I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Scientifically,
I drink and they drink socially.
Yeah, actually, I have a family member that just got diagnosed with sclerosis of the liver, whatever it's called. Yeah,
but I don't think that's an outcome for everyone who drinks.
Correct.
And I'm glad I'm on this program because I've learned some things I didn't know, and you've given me some things to think about. But let me turn your argument a little bit, if I could. Mm-hmm. What I understand from from over 20 years of teaching high school kids, and what I understand from what I've read on the subject is the danger, the binge drinking for underage students, under 21 occurs when they are with peers, when there's no adults in the room, when there's no one around to say, we can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, or you don't get access, and someone procures and they just down it, and they down it fast, and they're not functioning very well. Well, let me make the argument that if it gets delivered to a home by and received by someone who's 21 or over, that it will be safer because there's an adult there. That actually home delivery would put it in the hands of someone who's probably, there's that old Mark Twain line about how stupid his dad was until he turned 21. His dad got really smart all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And every one of us who've sensed young sons and daughters on LDS missions have fond memories of that letter from the kid home going, I love you, Mom and Dad. You did a lot of great things for me. I didn't realize it at the time, but you were really good for me. And, maturity comes. And someone over 21 is going to be more mature. They're the people receiving the beer. And probably they're not the vast 99.999% of those people are not obtaining it to give to someone underage.
Right. And so the people that are already receiving alcohol underage, this will still improve the accessibility for them. I imagine a group of teenagers in the next room while somebody who is old enough receives the beer. Now they don't even have to go out to get it. Now it's being brought to them. The accessibility is just, there is so much potential danger there. And I would even say not potential. I would say there's a lot of danger that will happen, that would happen if a bill like this did go through. I get it. I really do. People should have the freedom. I'm not saying that we should restrict this even more. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we don't make it easier than it already is. And that's where I think David has been taking this argument down the road of, Whit, why are you such an authoritarian? I'm not an authoritarian. I believe in freedom. I think right now we have a happy medium. A happy medium is, it is not illegal. It is age restricted, and you can go purchase it if you are of that legal age. But you need to go and you need to pick it up. We are not going to make it more easy for you to obtain this liquor, and even easier to distribute it to those who are not of age.
Yeah, I just don't buy your argument.
So beyond the arguments, what is the next step for this legislation to go forward to take on its adversaries and try to make its way into law?
Well, this is an early one to get word out about what we're proposing to do and to listen to people's concerns and arguments for and against. The Speaker of the House of Representatives designates one or two individuals and tells people, you want to run liquor legislation, talk to these people. And the Senate, President Adams has designated Senator Jerry Stevenson. I've had some preliminary conversations with Jerry Stevenson. They have a group that meets a few times a year that includes people who represent retail establishments who sell beer, and includes Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It includes representatives of the LDS Church. It includes a broad policy spectrum of people on this issue, as is well represented on the call tonight, making these arguments for and against. And they consider legislation. Usually when liquor legislation is passed in Utah, it usually happens. It's rarely just a bill like mine. It's usually two or three things combined. Years ago, I don't remember. I think it was before I was in the legislature. There was a bill combined, and the people who were concerned, as WIT is legitimately concerned about making sure that it's not unduly available to people, got an appropriation of money to create a addition to the Utah core health curriculum for like 8th graders and 11th graders or 10th graders. So that was added. Usually there's several things get put together in a bill. But when I got up here in 2010, there was a guy named Joe Arpaio. He was a sheriff in Arizona, and he was authorizing his deputies to stop anyone he thought might be illegal immigrants and to question them. And that caused an uproar for and against.
So that's a civil rights violation.
Yeah, one of my point being, my good friend from Utah Candy Run, he insisted it was not like Sheriff Arpaio's work. Some of us thought it was, but he had my respect. While I disagreed with his legislation, he didn't hold on to it until to the next last week of the legislature and then rabbit out of a hat. Here's my controversial legislation. He opened the bill file in August or September, and he went to speak to groups and said, here's what I'm proposing to do. Groups that were in favor, groups that were opposed. And I admired him because he just said, let's just have the dialogue. That's why I like this program. And I agreed to get on because I thought it'd be important to talk about it. And I think dialogue matters. Anyone who's got, I think the Apostle Paul was absolutely correct. Words can destroy. Words can also heal. It depends upon your intent and what you intend them to do.
So, Representative, I do have a question for you.
Shoot.
Growing up in the 80s and 90s, we had the DARE program.
Yeah.
Drug abuse resistance education. And I remember the Flintstone kids. If David, I don't know if you ever watched that show growing up, but it was popular for me.
I got some news for you, bro.
What's that?
I'm older than you.
I know you are. Did you ever watch that show though? That was the question.
Yeah, I even had the DARE program in like 6th grade.
Okay. Yeah. So the Flintstone kids, they had Michael Jackson that appeared on this. He had a character named Michael Jackstone, right? And they revamped one of his songs to Beat It and to just say no to drugs and beat it, right? And that had a huge impact on me as a kid. I still remember it. But the DARE program in and of itself, it actually, studies have shown that it had a negative impact, had the opposite impact on what the program was created for. That instead of preventing kids by teaching them the negative habits or the negative consequences of developing that sort of a habit, it actually piqued the curiosity of those kids. And so now that they had been introduced to it, when they had the opportunity to finally partake of it, then they did, because they already had more knowledge of it. Maybe it's the fear was taken away because it was before them and they thought that they had already they knew what it was going to do. I don't know exactly what the psychology is there, but it was shown that it actually was more detrimental.
I've had this explained to me before, Whit. If you tell someone that something is bad for you, let's say in this case marijuana, and the kids don't have an acute death reaction when they smoke marijuana for their first time, they're going to say, damn, these people lied to me. And then that will become a gateway to more experimental drugs that people are told not to do. And again, I seriously believe that a lot of our dysfunction in society is the nanny state standing over us, telling us not to do this, not to do that, when in fact it should be our parents' obligation to teach us, this is why we don't do stupid things like this, for example.
Sadly, you can't legislate that, though. That is up to the individual parent. And another thing that's I agree with you that for some people, when you tell somebody to do something or to not do something, it has a negative impact, has the opposite effect. For me, though, what did it for me was I saw the negative effects. And so a lot of people, when they're told to not do these things, in theory, without actually observing the outcomes for themselves, that's exactly what it is. It's just theory. It doesn't have practical effect. And then when they just experiment, that's when they get that idea that, hey, everybody's lied to me, so now I'm going to go ahead and do it more, do it in higher quantities, and I'm going to try other things too. For me, I actually saw what it did to people. And I vowed at a very young age, I will never do this. And people will tell me all the time, even recently, just this week, it's okay in certain quantities and just be responsible with it. And to me, I say, you know what? I may be one of those addicted personalities. I may be. I mean, I know that I'm an addictive worker. I know that I work extremely long hours on multiple projects because I think I do. I have one of those impulsive addictive personalities, and I've seen family members that have that. And when they have used substances, they can't break away from it. So for me, it's holy crap. I don't even want to try this stuff. I don't want to destroy my life. I would rather put this energy towards something that's good. I would rather find my fulfillment in doing something productive than to try to drown out or self-medicate to the best of my ability. Now, as a disabled veteran, as an injured veteran, I live with chronic pain. And not just that, I live with sleep deprivation because of my chronic pain. I can't sleep, and that creates these downward cycles at times where I'm just not a very nice person to be around because I'm in pain and I'm losing sleep. I have been extremely tempted to go towards substances of all sorts to try to self-medicate because of people that have offered it to me, or programs have said, hey, it's okay now. And it's just, I can't do it because, again, I have seen the negative effects. And I believe that I'm susceptible to that. So real quick, I would hope that all of the energy that we could put into a bill like this, which I applaud the creativity behind it. I applaud the out of the box thinking that goes along with it. But I just think that this energy should be put in towards educating individuals, and not just in theory, but showing, hey, this is what can happen. Try to make it a reality for people. Try to shake them awake. Really just say, this can be you. Not everybody gets sclerosis of the liver, but you can. Not everybody dies in a drunken accident, but you can. Look at this. Look at this car. Look at this. I wouldn't say put a graphic picture in front of a person, right? But, just these are the possibilities. Please,
I think scare tactics like graphic pictures are perfectly legitimate tactics to use to educate people, and it is graphic. It is graphic to die in a car accident. And for me, I think we're aiming for the same thing. I mean, I'm a freedom extremist, and I admit it. I know that freedom isn't always good. It can be evil, but I think it's necessary to have freedom over authoritarianism in order to have a healthy society where the cream can rise to the top. And people are going to make these mistakes, but then there's going to be people with your gene set who say, I'm a dedicated person. I can defer gratification. I can excel and do great things. Those people will rise to the top if you let them. But if you try to save everybody, you're going to use your energies unwisely.
No, and I agree. And I don't want to take too much time away between a dialogue between the two of us. We do have the representative here, but you change the argument to nature versus nurture. And I do believe that nature has a lot to do with it. You're born with certain traits and susceptibilities, but at the same time, and in different quantities as well, depending on who the person is. However, there is the education aspect of it as well. There is the nurture. And I don't know, maybe your way of doing things is the right way. Maybe it is, because those family members from a prior generation who did mess themselves up and who did choose unwisely, thank goodness that I didn't suffer the effects of that to a great degree, because many, many, many people who grew up in my circumstances do not fare out as well as I did, or not as fortunate as I was. And somehow I was lucky to squeeze by. All possibility, everything points to where I should have been in the same situation as they were. I should have followed after their example, because that's what I grew up with, right? That's who I'm thinking about too. So maybe your way is right. Maybe allowing extreme freedom so that those people can make their decisions, and then maybe 1 out of 100, such as myself, who will survive that, will be able to say, no, don't do this, everybody. Maybe it's a good thing to have just 1 out of 100 make it. I don't know. I believe that there's a better way, though. I believe that education is the way to do it.
Joel, can you give us any closing arguments?
I have two grandchildren. I have a son who lives in the Portland, Oregon metro area, and we go up, visit a few times a year, and we see an awful lot of, green crosses. There's recreational cannabis is legal in Oregon. I've got 2 grandkids. I'm not really concerned about them becoming addicted. I'm not encouraging my son to move to Idaho or Utah because the kids will be safer. My son and daughter-in-law don't use. The message they're giving their kids is we don't do that kind of thing. I'm not overly concerned. I think they're going to be raised right. I trust my son and daughter-in-law I think they're sending the right messages. I think they'll continue to send the right messages. And I think the kids will be okay. And if they start to use, you deal with those issues too. Beer is legal. I don't imbibe, but I'm not sure that all the policy in Utah should always be made by people who don't drink. I think the change I'm suggesting is a small change. That's a change of delivery. It's not a change of use. And I'm happy to listen. I thought Whit brought up some things I need to think about. And I appreciate David and Whit and the Tooele Happy Hour for having public dialogue in a respectful way. We need more of this. Thanks for the opportunity.
I agree. Joel, thanks for coming on the show. And
sure.
And I hope you'll come back. I really enjoyed talking to you. I think you have a great perspective.
My wife says when I go to a party or something, I need to wear a sign that says warning, retired history teacher. Like, you don't even need to put a nickel in, man. The guy will just talk. Sure, I'd love to. You bring me on. Happy to.
What's your specialty in history, Joel? Do you have a?
I tell you. Oh, I love the early founding and the constitutional period. When the Black Lives Matter thing erupted a couple of years ago, I went to the library, and I've been telling myself I was going to read this book. There's a guy teaches back east named Dr. Eric Fauner. He's a history and reconstruction of the U.S. I read his 600-plus page book about what happened in the southern states during the Civil War and then the 10 to 15 years after. Once we freed slaves, what happened? I wanted to know. I wanted to understand. I read a lot about contemporary history, but I love the founding period. I love the Revolutionary period. Got a lot of reading on that. I just love American history. I'd have a little bit more money where every parent who came to parent-teacher conference said, you know what, Mr. Briscoe, I really couldn't stand history when I was 16, 15, 17, but I am so interested right now. Sometimes I think we should check those kids out and go, okay, but you get your history credit when you turn 35 and you come back. And we're going to have an evening history class for parents who get interested at age 40. Mm-hmm. I loved the kids who were 16 and 17 and who were interested. They were a delight. And I understood that there were kids sitting in my class for whom it was a chore, but it was like, you know what? I'm with the legislature and the state school board. You all need to be here and you all need to hear this. And we should all be talking about it. That's how we define who we are, is talking about our history, where we've been and how we got here.
Wow. Well, thanks for coming on. I think that's a pretty enlightening perspective. I wish you luck with your legislation.
Thanks.
I don't think Whit wishes you as much luck as I wish you.
No, I might be reaching out to Whit. We might be talking to, maybe Whit's got some changes he wants to make in it. Happy to listen.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Well, I'll reach out. I'll give you my number.
Great. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Joel Briscoe, Utah House District 24. He's trying to make legislation to have beer delivered to your location at your convenience. Now, I think if you're a listener out there listening to this and you're really passionate about this particular issue, I wish you would reach out to Joel. He's easy to find, and show him or explain to him your perspective. Give him your comments, be polite and productive. And again, this is a civilization, like Joel said, if we can't communicate, what's left? The only way for civilization to work is to communicate, because the other method is not civilized. There is dialogue, and then there is everything else that is barbaric. So I appreciate
if you want to, I don't know what the Tooele Happy Hour practice is. If you want to put my legislative email up there, my contact information, that's great. If you think I'm nuts and I'm crazy, that's fine. And as long as you don't, call my family names, and as long as you don't threaten me, you're more than welcome to disagree with me.
Well, Representative, everybody has to be a little crazy to be involved in politics, right?
That's, you know what? You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. You might say my idea is one of the dumbest things you ever heard. That's fine. If you have a better idea, that goes a little bit better. But you're welcome to criticize. You're welcome to tell me you think it's great. Either way.
Well, there you have it. Joel, thank you for coming on the Tooele Happy Hour. It was a pleasure to have you on as a guest.
Thanks for the invite. You have a great time out there in Tooele. Be safe.
You too. Thanks.
You bet. Bye bye.